I think we're live. Hello. Well,
There's no indicator at all.
yeah, right? These things, they're so weird. They never indicate. But usually somebody will say something like, hey, we can see you. And then it makes you calm. Nobody's saying anything.
Uh-oh.
Uh,
It
we'll
says
see.
live in the top left.
Okay. Oh, we are getting some thing that looks like it might be. All right. All right. I'm going to believe. Hello, everybody, friends, and family, and whatnot, whoever's watching. Welcome to SerenityOS Office Hours with me and Andrew.
Hello.
We decided to put our initials just so you can tell who's who. And we are here to do the office hours, which, of course, is where we take random questions about SerenityOS and the surrounding projects. Anything that you might want to talk about. And we're just going to wait for somebody to ask some questions. But in the meantime, I guess we can talk a little bit about what we're doing. Andrew, what do you think about that?
Sure.
So everybody already knows I'm doing all the Fix Me stuff. And we don't know a lot about you other than that you are really into CMake for some reason.
I would say it's more that no one else is into CMake. And when I look at some of the build system things that we have going on, I feel motivated to change them. What else have I been doing? I mean, well, you may be a maintainer, like, how long ago was that? 2 months or something? So I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out what that means for me, how much time I'm going to spend on that, how much time I'm going to spend reviewing code, merging code, whatever. And I've been chatting a lot with Ali about Yakt and the future of, well, I added a bunch of stuff to help with Windows support, and Ali has been bashing his head over that. I've been mostly maintaining all the CMake stuff for Yakt, and we moved a bunch of extra utility classes to the standard library, and you had started trying to make Yakt build with the ACK library proper, and Ali picked that up and ran with it. And I've been helping him
To
with
his
CMake
credit.
for that.
Right. Yeah, that's actually what made me stop, was that I had to deal with CMake, and then I just thought, I'll just do this later.
Yeah, I've been meaning to. There's like people have been saying for a month or two now that, oh, well, we really need Ladybird to be in the Serenity repo because we break it all the time. Like,
Yeah.
it's constant. Like, every week somebody pushes some improvement to the browser and it breaks Ladybird. And there's this pull request that I think Ali made that's just been sitting there because no one wants to make it look pretty. And I've been meaning to pick that up, but I haven't yet. So maybe I'll do that this weekend. We'll see.
Okay, we got some basic questions, but let's take them anyway.
Sure.
How's the weather been from Tobias? I'll let you answer first, actually. I have no idea what your weather is like.
Yeah. Well, it's super sunny here because it's like 9 in the morning. But it's always strange here. It's like it'll be, like 20 Celsius one day, and then the next day it'll be -5 and it'll snow, and then it'll be 20 again the next day. It's always an exciting winter in Colorado. Weather is very temperamental, but lately it's been all right. Nothing to complain about. Pretty cold.
An American using Celsius. That's unusual.
Well, I figure there's a lot of Europeans here. They should know what I'm talking about.
Very thoughtful. Yeah. We had -12 Celsius last night, which was refreshing. We had to start driving the car to make the windshield stop freezing because we were trying to like scrape the ice off, but it just wasn't working.
Oh, jeez.
Good times.
That's how you need a heated garage like the Canadians have.
Yes, we do need that. Let's see. Hey, do you want to read that question?
So Clinus asks, what general purpose CMake feature would you want that would be most beneficial to Serenity? That's an interesting question. trying to think, what is our biggest problem that we have? I don't know. I think our biggest problem with our CMake is that our project has outgrown our expertise. Like
Mhm.
we've got tons and tons and tons of libraries, and it's just barely holding together. At least for the Lagom side, like for the Linux and the Mac OS builds, like the CMake list has never looked pretty for that. Whereas for the main build, we've kind of kept it looking good. So I guess if we could find a way to make it so that we could have host tools and a cross compile build in the same list file, or in the same CMake build, that would be really nice. That's something that I think people have asked for on the CMake GitLab a lot, and they've said no, that's not possible. Like we can't do that. Like you have to, each CMake project has to be for one specific target. But it's something that I think every project that's trying to cross compile something interesting has to deal with. That they want to build some tool and then use it in the build of their main project, and they just can't do it. So
Yeah. Interesting. It's interesting that you say that we've outgrown our expertise. I feel like we're so far outside my expertise that I don't even know what our problems are anymore.
our
Like,
problems are we need
yeah.
to attract more CMake experts to come tell us how terrible our patterns are, and then put the right ones in place.
Yeah, that has happened in the past, right?
Yes.
Which was productive.
Yeah.
Um,
We've improved a lot in the last 2 years, but there's
yeah.
still a long way to go. I know
I
that.
guess. No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say when we started, when you made the Ladybird repo and I added the CMake lists, that all the Linux package maintainers came out of the woodwork trying to package the project because they were like, new browser, I'm gonna put
Mm,
this on Arch and Fedora, and well, maybe not Fedora, but like, and Nix and whoever else that people like to put packages on, and
yeah, yeah. All
like
the bleeding edge people.
yeah, and you go look at their package builds or whatever, and it's like, mm, yeah, that's not what that should look like. It should be build, install, and everything should be our problem. And then we're having to bend over backwards to make the thing actually run after you installed it. So
Mm, yeah. All right. Let's see. Hey, would you consider building your own build system for Serenity? From Andre, with our
well,
turtles all the way down.
that's something that JT has been telling us we need to build for Yakt for how long has he been saying that? Like the whole time, pretty much.
I think it started early. Yeah. I think like the first time JT saw somebody using CMake to do something, and then there was immediately that like, well, maybe we should just make our own. Um,
Well, hopefully he didn't hate the build system I put in place for uh, his NES emulator too bad.
nah, probably not. I mean, CMake is good enough. I feel like for so many things. It's just that, as you say, like we don't really understand what it is that we built here, to an extent,
Sure.
or at least not necessarily how to improve it. So to answer the question, I do think there's something appealing about it, right? Like
Yeah.
having control over the whole thing. We know what we want to do, but at the same time, like you mentioned, Linux distros coming and wanting to build our stuff.
Yeah.
Like, how happy would they be to find our own build system?
They would not be happy at all.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's not really the point of our project, to make Linux distros happy.
No,
But
no, absolutely not. But still a bit funny. Anyways, let's see. Mustafa is asking if Yakt will get a stable ABI. How will you be able to link against Serenity libraries? I don't know the answer to that.
I think the answer is no, and easily.
Yeah,
because
probably.
because just like with the rest of the Sony libraries, like we don't promise anything about ABI, right? Like Andy Kelly asked us on Mastodon. He was like, "Hey, I want to build Zig libraries targeting Serenity. Like, can you give me a stable ABI for the kernel itself?" And we joked around and said, "Nah, just link the C library, bro." And like that's the position, right? Like we don't care about ABI. We just like build from source and it'll be great. And I think
Shout
that'll
outs to
work.
Andy Kelly, by the way,
Yeah,
fellow AK.
that'll work for the project in the short term. I think, yeah. For Serenity libraries, that's what Ali's been working on lately. Is he's been prototyping that after the Yakt changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unthinkable that one day there will be some kind of stability in the ABI, but that's definitely not something being targeted at the moment. It's just too much fluctuation and randomness, things changing up and down.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh shoot, I'm so far behind. Hey, Lena's commenting on your shirt.
Oh yeah, got this one at I think it was at Johnson Space Center. We went to Orlando my senior year of college. Got a bunch of swag. SerenityOS in space. There's other constraints in space than we have in Serenity. So I don't know about that one.
Project for the future, perhaps.
Maybe.
Sam has the big brain strat here, saying that we can get a blog post about our CMake setup onto Hacker News and then wait for people to fix it.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, didn't you at least start on a series about our build system?
Yeah, I started. Where is that?
I feel like part 1 came out, right?
Yes, I wrote about the old Makefile system.
Yeah, but right, so you need to do part 2 where you boast about how great our CMake stuff is.
No. Part 2 is about how you and Sergey did some experiments with CMake back in 2020.
Oh,
Got the first cut of it. I think you started it, and then Sergey got it merged, and then what else happened? People improved it, and then it kind of just sat there. And then part 3 is about how great it currently is.
Okay, all right.
How do I post a comment in this thing?
You should have a little text box at the bottom right.
Maybe.
Do you not have that? Maybe it doesn't know.
It doesn't know my YouTube. Username.
You're gonna have to side channel that.
All right.
Or I can figure it out, actually. Yes, that was actually pretty easy. It was on your GitHub IO, right?
Yep.
Okay. AK's post about Serenity Build System Part 1 just dropped in the chat.
There we go.
Okay.
I think I promised Daniel that I would finish that over either Thanksgiving or Christmas, and Thanksgiving is long gone. So here we are.
Well, Christmas is about to start.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got Yuki Cat asking, why not move from a mono repo for libraries to Git submodule opt-in style? In the libraries folder, you would have a file that does add subdirectory for each library. You could toggle what you need. So I think I have many reasons for liking mono repos. The main one is just the atomicity of commits, like the fact that you can make one commit that touches the entire code base, and any dependency that you break, you fix in the same commit. So you have like fully atomic changes like that. And I'm not aware of any way to do that across submodules, but I'm not a Git expert either.
Yeah, I don't think that I've worked with projects that have like half a dozen submodules, and if you're trying to do anything, if you don't set up your workflows such that you're creating tagged releases for each of those submodules, and like the consuming projects are consuming those tags instead of just pointing to some random commit, you're going to have a really bad time. And if you want to change 2 or 3 of the submodules at a time, it's a really awkward dance of like merge the leaves first, and then you make tags. You merge the branches, and then you merge into the the main consuming project. It's very, I don't think it's the right fit for this project, especially given how fast we're trying to make changes to everything.
Yeah. And I'm thinking like about these large scale like whole project refactorings that we do. like recently with string changes, for example. You could figure out ways to do it incrementally, but it's just tedious.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the reason is that a monorepo allows us to do like large project-wide changes with minimum friction. Hey, Sufi Bros asking, what are some cool things you would like to see ported to Serenity? Okay.
That's a good one. I think the things that have been on my mind lately is more dynamic analysis tools, right? Like um, we've got user space emulator. It exists. It doesn't quite work for x86-64, which is unfortunate because that's what I like to build most of the time.
Yeah.
We've got the Serenity debugger. It kind of works. But I think the thing that we're missing is like address sanitizer, right? Like we could totally go into compiler RT in the Elevating project and like tweak the if defs to get ourselves upstream address sanitizer, but I feel like we should just do what we did for undefined sanitizer and implement the runtime library ourselves. And that's, I know Brian had started with the kernel address sanitizer, and someone in the kernel channel picked it up recently. But I think that those types of tools are really missing because we get such powerful testing things from running those tools in our CI for Lagom for all of our unit tests that we run.
Yeah.
And I think we're missing some of that for the parts of the system that only run on Serenity.
Yeah, sure. The whole GUI stack, basically, it's
there's probably horrible memory errors in there that we never run into, or that we run into all the
or
time. That are just
always run into.
benign.
Yeah. We just don't know. Yeah, totally agree. I guess, do you know what is the technical hurdle with ASAN, for example? Is it just about like all of the things you need to implement for allocating shadow memory and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's just implementing the __ ASAN APIs, doing all that.
Okay.
I know for kernel space, you have to be very careful about how you do the shadow memory, but I think for user space, it's just mechanical. I mean, less
Yeah.
mechanical than the ubisan ones, which are just like, here's a bunch of failure information, print it out, please. There's a little bit more going on with ASAN because you have to track stores and loads, but
Yeah. We could also improve our own tools, of course. We should improve our own tools,
right.
but also build libsanitizer support. I think we call it libsanitizer, right? The one
Yeah,
that has oobsan already.
it's lib sanitizer with one sanitizer, and we keep doing that. We make these libraries that are like super generic, and then we implement one specific use case in there.
Yeah, we do that. But I don't know. It's not the end of the world, I feel like.
No, it's fine. It's
Yeah,
just funny.
Let's see. All right, Tobias asking the real questions. What will be the first Yakt step to take in order to get a 64-bit user space emulator? I would say first absolutely first step would be get it to disassemble a 64-bit binary correctly, because UE is built on top of libx86, and libx86 has two front ends. It has the user space emulator, but it also has the disassembly program, and it uses the same instruction parsing. So if you can get it to disassemble a program correctly, then you know that you have the right sequence of instructions, and then once you have the right sequence of instructions, it's just a matter of modeling the CPU registers and implementing the instructions. I would think that would be a good Yakt step.
Yeah, I think Edon made some changes recently to that. I know there were some.
Itamar did. I saw.
Oh, wrong developer whose name starts with I. Yes, it was Itamar.
Yeah. I think it's the same country as well, I think. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. But I think someone had some old changes to UE for x86-64, and I think Supercomputer 7 ported those up, and we just kind of merged those in.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we took those in recently.
but I don't think it works yet. We still need the disassembling working, and then whatever soft CPU support is required to actually
Yeah.
churn through those, especially things like SSE, which we just kind of ignore for regular old x86.
Yeah, there was some start on a vector instructions, but it's very incomplete. So
Yeah. SIMD
lots of
is a
work to
part of
do.
the system that I always just kind of look at and say, yep, that's for optimization, and then just stay away from because I don't understand it.
Yeah. I think the idea that the compiler can just auto-vectorize your code for you is very compelling, but obviously in practice, you can get a lot more out of it if you go and do things manually as well.
Yep.
Let's see. Klein is asking, why are we shipping our own CMake build now? Is it as usual Linux distros being slow with new versions?
Well,
Andrew?
that's part of it. I think the main reason was that I pushed up. So we created a bunch of platform files for CMake that tells CMake what Serenity is, how to link libraries on Serenity, that sort of thing. Just telling it what our target is, the same thing that we did for the compilers. And I pushed that upstream to CMake over the summer, I think, maybe 6 months ago. And they finally released an update that um, had our platform files. And I'd ever since I pushed those up, I had wanted to delete our copy and just um, transform any updates we need to make to that into just patches to CMake instead of maintaining however many CMake files. I mean, it used to be just one CMake file, but then I pushed it. I made a pull request upstream, and Brad King told me that, oh, well, you need to split this out into 10 files based on compiler and OS. And I was like, sure, man, whatever. But I didn't really understand the purpose of that, but it matches the pattern of other OSs. But I think people still use Ubuntu 18.04, and they probably shouldn't. I think it's close to end of life. But I don't. I would like to be able to enforce upgrading our CMake version so that we can clean up some fix me's in our CMake. But we've got it locked down to 3.16, I think. So this was a good excuse to bump that up.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
the reason why I made the build CMake thing is because telling people to go out and find an updated version of CMake is just another hassle. Like, we already tell people to do that with Clang format, and people constantly run into issues with that. So I think, I don't know. I feel like instead of telling people, just go ask your distro to update faster or change your distro to something newer, bleeding edge, like, that's not a reasonable solution. Like, if we're building LLVM, like, we can build CMake too. Who cares? Like, it's not that much more of a thing to build. So I don't know. It feels good to maintain our own tools.
Yeah, I was happy to see that actually because I've had exactly this problem with my distro in the past because like Ubuntu doesn't update their CMake as often as we would like. And I'm sure many distros have the same problem. So it's been good. And maybe we can do the same thing for Clang format somehow
Yeah.
without like a 2-hour build for people.
Well, you can, if you have a Clang build already because you like using the Clang build for whatever reason. I mean, I don't even know why I like it. It seems better. Oh, I like it because it can build Clang D for me as well.
Mm.
But yeah, you can use the Clang format from those Clang build, and it'll work just fine. That'll be version 15. That's an alarm. But I don't know. I think that's the best part of using the Clang build, for me at least, is that I can build a Clang D server that knows what Serenity is. It has all of our patches in it. You don't have to go into the definitions file and say, Oh yeah, just define underscore under Serenity. It'll be fine. And go look here for the standard library. You can just say, oh, well, the sysroot is over there and we're building for Serenity. And it says, oh, okay, cool. And it already knows how to parse everything. You don't have to trick it into thinking it's building for Linux, but it's actually building Serenity.
What do you need that for? The ClangD?
That's for the VS Code plugin. That's the
Oh, I
language
see.
server.
You're not Team Sea Lion?
Nah.
All right.
Probably could be, but I've gotten
Hey.
pretty familiar with VS Code, so I just keep using it.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Oh, we got Sky Rising saying that their changes from March were picked up. That would be the 64-bit changes, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, it's nice to have the people here. You know, when you make passing reference to somebody and they're like, "Yep, yep." Thank you for being here, Sky Rising. Let's see. Linus saying, beyond the build system, which part of the system do you know best and least?
That's an interesting question. I think, what do I know best? Probably the parts of the kernel related to process loading I'm pretty familiar with. That's where I made some of my first changes. I think the runtimes and like the dynamic loader I feel pretty familiar with because when the heck did that happen? That was Christmas 2019. I made the first patches to do DL open and stuff, and then failed repeatedly over the next 6 months to try to turn that into a larger dynamic library change, and then finally Itamar picked it up and dragged it across the finish line. I think I feel very uncomfortable whenever I look at the GUI stack, though. Like I can kind of wrap my head around it, but as far as a deep knowledge, it's super foreign. I feel like I don't know what would be the least, like the absolute least comfortable. I'm not sure. It would probably be a part of the system that I don't even look at. Like it used to be that I was a little intimidated by the JS and the web engine, but then I got my hands dirty in that, and it turns out it's actually kind of fun to work on. But I don't know. I think the testing infrastructure is something that I wrote that test runner C++ program that goes and grabs all the files and runs the tests and parses configs and stuff. And I feel like there was this big push for that maybe a year ago for where everyone was writing tests and moving tests around. And after that, recently the people that were excited about testing have spent less time on the project. I'm not answering the question, but hopefully it's interesting.
I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, I also noticed you like sort of diving into the browser part after managing to stay out of it for a long time. And as you say, like whenever you get suckered into some part of the system that you don't know, it usually ends up being really interesting and fun to work on. I think,
I'd say
yeah.
I'm completely unfamiliar with the OpenGL stack. I don't know anything about it.
Yet.
And I know there's that pull request for adding shaders that's been in the pipeline for a very long time. And I think Supercomputer 7 said today that he was gonna change it all to new string instead of keeping deprecated string in there, which good luck. That's a very large patch, my man. But
it seems like an unnecessary, unrelated refactor to stack on top of that.
Well, it was. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we should get in there and merge it before he has a chance. But
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know anything about that part of the system.
It's funny that you say that you're uncomfortable in the testing part of the system, because I was just thinking that like what's Andrew comfortable with? Yeah, well, he probably knows the testing stuff really well.
Yeah.
And you're like one person I would ask about testing.
Well,
Shows what I know.
I know it more or less, but I don't know. Like, I was trying to update the WASM test runner because you look at the website and it's been broken since November 1st, and the way that evolved over time is very confusing. Like in the beginning there was test.js, and then someone copied the entire program into test web, and then those kind of coexisted. And then when Brian started the great test migration over to /tests instead of having tests sprinkled out everywhere, I don't know if it was Ali or Linus who refactored the libjs test runner into this libjs test runner thing, and the normal test runner class, and that was mostly used for, like, I think it was in ACT tests at the beginning. But this JavaScript test runner is really just taking a standalone application and pretending it's a library. And it's very confusing how to update that. And every time I've tried to change it a little bit, maybe get some more information out of the tests, I always feel like I'm completely busting all of the test 262 stuff. Like, it doesn't feel very robust. And when I was working with those WASM changes, the thing that stood out to me was, why on earth are we stashing these spec tests in the source tree? Right? If we're downloading files from the internet and we're building tests, we want to run them, why are we putting them in the source tree? That's not where they go. They should be in the build tree, or they should be somewhere completely different. And when I went to test that, the reason was that, oh, well, that's the JS tests are in the source tree. And so you set Serenity source_dir and it goes and finds your tests based on this macro. Okay. But I don't want my tests to be, I don't want downloaded files in the source tree. So in order to run that thing now, if you look in the Lagom CMake lists, it's like, here's test WASM, and then here's this giant path for where the tests are, and then here's this other path for where test common.js is. And it's like, I don't know.
It sounds to me like you know the testing infra pretty well.
I know it pretty well, but it still confuses me when I go to look at it. I don't particularly like how bespoke it feels.
Sure. So let me add on to Linus's question then. Like, what part of the system would you like to know better? Like, where would you like to expand next?
I don't know. I feel like the label of the CMake guy doesn't really fit my skill set. I know how to program too, guys. So I think, what on earth is that company calling me for? Lost my train of thought. I'd like to get into the Arch64 kernel stuff. I think that would be good. I think the kernel startup has kind of been a mystery. I mean, you made that video like 3 years ago now, doing the code tour of the startup.
Yeah. It's not exactly accurate anymore.
It's not. It's surprisingly still accurate. That's some of the oldest code in the system, and I think we have an opportunity with the AR64 port to make startup make sense. Mm-hmm. That's something that's always bothered me about the kernel, is how we tend to create singletons for everything. And whether that's a good pattern or not for kernel space is up for debate. It certainly is easy to write and helpful to get things kickstarted. But there's a lot of device initialization things that we need to do that are currently completely hard-coded. And we could be dynamically doing those based on, ACP tables or whatever. And for ARM, the natural thing to do is use device tree. So I started a device tree parser. How long ago was that now? 18 months or something? I've had this branch that's been sitting there forever, not doing anything. So I'd probably like to get back into that when I find the inspiration.
Yeah, that would be great. It's definitely sort of an underserved part of the project, I feel like, because not a lot of people want to work on the low-level parts of the kernel. So whenever somebody expresses interest in that, like, go there, do that. So I hope that you continue that train of thought.
Hopefully.
Let's see. Sam saying, what part of the system would you like to know less? Well, and why is it CMake? Also, I just want to apologize for labeling you a CMake guy. I did not mean to. Did not mean to imply that you cannot program, Andrew. I'm aware that you can program.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, Clinus asking, Andrew, what other open source software projects do you work on? Upstreaming Serenity stuff does not count.
I don't think I work on any that aren't related to Serenity. I think if you check my GitHub, what have I contributed to? It's all Serenity stuff. Yeah, it's all Serenity, nothing else.
Strong focus. That's good.
Yeah, Serenity and upstreaming stuff for Serenity. I think upstreaming stuff that's related to Serenity is it's a lot of fun. Getting people to trying to dive into parts of the open source ecosystem that you just take for granted. Like you just download Ubuntu, you download these packages, everything's great. And you try to put your own OS in there and you realize that there's this history of like 50 years of Unixes just strewn about these projects that are older than my parents. Like it's, well, maybe not, but like there's these really, really old projects that have a history of adding OSs you've never heard of. You look at them and it's like, oh yeah, this company back in the 80s made this weird version of Unix that was really, really popular for 15 years. And then Linux came around and it's gone. And I think seeing this project sitting up there in those projects at the same level as things like AIX or other big business things is, I don't know, it's a weird feeling, but it's also really inspiring.
It's funny because in the future somebody will be looking through like their autoconf files, because of course in the future we'll still have autoconf.
Oh, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And then they'll see us, like, hey, it's Serenity, huh?
We'll be the high Q of 10 years from now. Like, oh yeah, that project started. They've got their own thing going. That's cool. Hopefully it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting when we started upstreaming some of those things, or whenever that happens, because it always gives me like a little bit of pause. I feel like, why do we gotta put our stuff upstream? Like we have this nice isolated little thing going here. Like if we put stuff upstream, it's like we have to commit to it, which is just a silly feeling. But it always makes me feel like we're committing to something, however small.
I don't mind committing to like build systems and compilers and stuff. I think that's something we should do more of, so we can carry less of our own patches that we use every day. Yeah, I think for all the ports, upstreaming stuff is like, if the patches make sense and they accept it, great. But I think most people, if I was maintaining some random open source project and some OS that's not even upstream to GCC asked me to upstream their patches, I'd probably say no. But
yeah, depending on their history of taking patches like that.
Sure. A lot of them are just like, just add Serenity to the list of Unixes with this property in this header file based on, include this, include that, enable this feature. Those patches everyone accepts. But the ones that are like, here's the serenity.c file for how our OS behaves. I'm not going to take that patch.
A good example of that, I guess, is SDL, right? Because we keep breaking our SDL port whenever something changes in the GUI code, which happens every now and then. Some GUI API changes, and then SDL port is broken. Somebody figures that out 2 weeks later and patches it up. And I feel like the SDL project will probably be a little bit tired of us like showing up every now and then, like, hey, we broke our GUI again. Can we fix it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's definitely projects that would rather us have a stable, something somewhat stable before they take our patches.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I agree with that. Like, I would rather be stable before sending out stuff also.
Yeah. With LLVM and stuff, we changed the runtimes a lot over the last 2 years, and every time we do that, we have to change LLVM. But it feels like it's slowing down. Maybe it'll change with Arch 64, but
Yeah, Sam says that 6 months later, half of the STL commits are Serenity related. It could end up like that. Andrew from Kleines, with the recent uptick in Serenity content creators, have you considered creating content beyond blog posts?
well, I saw this comment on one of your videos recently where someone asked for a code tour of process initialization and the dynamic loader, and I was thinking, like, who could possibly, well, not possibly, but who would have the context to make that reasonable? And I feel like me, Gunnar, maybe Tim or Itamar would be the only ones.
Yeah, it's a small group of people that touched all of that.
So maybe, no promises.
No promises, but
It's the thought is there. Let's put it that way.
all right. Look out for hashtag subscribe to Andrew coming up soon.
I don't know about that.
Let's see. Kleines also says it's definitely fun seeing SerenityOS on the German Wikipedia list of Unix-like operating systems. Well, it's jolly nice, isn't it? Linus asking if Andrew Kelly will be making a surprise appearance on this AK plus AK stream. I think that might be too much. I don't know.
Probably would have had to organize that one beforehand. You can't just hit him up on Twitter and be like, "Hey man, you wanna hop in my StreamYard?" I mean, maybe he'd say yes. Then we wouldn't know what to do.
True. Yeah, let's run away from this question before it goes too far, because we all saw what happened last week when you asked when I was going to have a guest next time. For anyone who wasn't here last week, Andrew asked me just at the end of last week's stream, like, so when are you going to have a guest on Office Hours next time? And this is what happens when you ask stuff like that.
Yeah, you're forced to dig up that webcam you have in your back closet and put it on top of your computer.
That's right. Sophie Bro saying, please make 5-minute random code walkthrough videos. Yeah, that could be a cool thing. But can you do it in 5 minutes?
I don't think so. I don't think that the one that I described is 5 minutes. It's more like half an hour. I guess the question is, how long would I convince myself that I can't start recording something and just talk to code? Because I have to make some charts, right? You got to make some pretty pictures and put them up on screen. It'll be great.
No, you don't. You don't need that.
You don't. But it'd be a good way to procrastinate. Oh, I can't start yet. I need charts.
Yeah. No, I think one thing that I've learned in making YouTube content is that people are like a lot more able to like take in information while just watching code than I originally thought. Like I thought also like, oh, we need charts, we need slides, whatever. But it turns out like you can talk over code and people will understand. The charts help, obviously, and they can broaden the audience, but people understand. You have no excuses, Andrew. You just expect to see a video by tomorrow morning.
Yep. Okay. I'll get right on that.
Great. Thank you. All right. Sorry, didn't mean to actually pressure you. Ares was saying, watching the Fix Me videos has been the highlight of my Christmas season so far. Yeah, I didn't realize that I was making something seasonal, but I guess I'm going to get tired of this, so probably it will end up being seasonal.
What the Christmas season is for hacking videos. You got to put on your hacker hoodie.
Dang, you're right. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's been so long since I did a hacker video. That's something you could do too, Andrew. By the way, I know that.
That's what I get.
You're just looking for inspiration for your new YouTube channel.
Yep.
So
That's it.
Arez was asking, when do you think we'll see a SerenityOS with all Yakt and no C++? Is it going to happen? Well, there has been considerable movement happening in the last couple of days towards Yakt building on Serenity, like Yakt-based programs building on Serenity. So Ali has, at least I've seen one prototype of a GUI program written in Yakt.
There's still some rough edges.
Yeah, there are some rough edges, and you have to do a fair bit of stuff to import our C++ libraries, but once that stuff gets ironed out, I think it's going to be pretty open prototyping season on random stuff like that. But as far as like all Yakt, no C++, that's, oh my goodness, what did I do?
You swapped us. Oh, we're back.
All Yakt and no C++, that feels like it's far, far out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, we've got, how many lines of code do we have? Like, I think SonarCube says on the main GitHub page, we've got like 700,000 lines of code or something like that. What's it say now? 675,000. Like that's a lot of C++. And I think we could probably reduce some percentage by converting it all to Yakt, but I don't think it would be more than 10 or 15% less source code. Maybe I'm not optimistic enough about the value of our implicit try stuff going on, but
we'll see. I mean, some things are you can write some things more compactly, right? It's a bit more expressive when it comes to pattern matching and stuff like that, which does shorten your code in some cases. But yeah, like 10%, I think would be a reasonable estimate in general lines of code reduction.
yeah, it took us 4 years to write this much, so
yeah,
maybe another 4 years to convert it all. We'll see.
Yeah, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, like Yakt is still an experiment that we're trying to see if we can come up with a way to do this in a better, more safe and secure way, right? More productive way. If it doesn't pan out, we will look for other solutions. But currently, we are investigating this path. I got Sam saying, in this stream, we peer pressure Andrew into doing things. I don't think it's working on Andrew. I hope not, at least.
No, it's not.
Okay, good.
I'll work on things when I get motivation. That's the bottom line.
Good. Yeah. That's the way to go. I'm glad that you say that. Lena says YouTube Shorts code tour. Oh my goodness.
I don't like. I've seen things like that pop up where someone's like, "Check out this cool VS Code feature," and they spend like 15 seconds on it, and then the video's over, and you didn't learn anything.
Yeah. Can you do the YouTube voice?
The YouTube voice?
Yeah, like, what's up, guys? That
no,
kind of thing.
No. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Let's move on from that idea. Tobias said that the hackering videos were fun. They were fun. It's like a mindset, I think, that I used to get just jolted into it because people would have these hacking competitions around Christmas and they would hack Serenity and then exploits would come out and I don't know, it was like a whole thing. But then they stopped putting us in the things.
We're too good. Our security is so impenetrable. There's no way any of those competitions could hack Serenity.
Right. Yeah. We got too good since then. You know?
See, now they're going to hack us and you'll have some content. You're welcome.
Thanks. Let's see. Supercomputer saying, what is your opinion about the upcoming file system table isolation for jails? What do you think about the proposed design? Do you have any other design in mind? You've been looking at this, Andrew.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I feel like the previous changes have really been following the pattern that OpenBSD has done. That is it OpenBSD? FreeBSD has jails. Is the FreeBSD has done, and that Linux C groups have done, namespaces. It all feels like it's cut from the same cloth. I haven't. Is there a pull request for that already? I don't think I've looked at it, but I think the path is very interesting. I think we can definitely achieve some of the security goals that we've been achieving with process isolation, like just spinning up 30 daemons to run a browser. We can achieve some of that with jails to take the ideas from Pledge and Unveil and really enforce them at the kernel level rather than requiring processes to opt in to these measures with specific source code. We can force a specific set of isolation onto them with jails. And I think we have the command line tools to force a veil on someone, to force pledges on someone. And I think the way to really force those on things like ports that we don't really trust, like if we want to run OpenJDK just in the normal Serenity directories instead of somewhere special, the way to do that would be with jails. So I think I'm a little concerned with how many places it touches in the kernel to have to check, do I have a jail? If I have a jail, I'm going to not let you do this. But I think that's probably unavoidable if we're going to enforce these sorts of security features at the kernel level.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Like you have to take into account everywhere. Although it does sometimes makes me wonder if sort of a namespace based architecture would make it less easy to screw it up, if that makes sense. Like if you always had a namespace ID that everything was part of, then you had to provide that everywhere when you're doing any kind of lookups internally in the kernel. I wonder if it would be easier to get it right. I don't know. Because like the changes I see so far is like, oh, you have to remember to iterate respecting jails or whatever it's called, right?
And I don't think there's anything wrong with the current implementation. I think it's doing everything right.
Yeah.
But so do I have another design in mind? No. Your design looks interesting. Let's try it.
Let's try it. Yeah, exactly. I think so too. And if it has any foot guns, then we will no doubt shoot ourselves in the feet and discover.
Exactly.
That's what usually happens. Okay, we got a lot of bizarre questions about copying kittens. I have not been following the chat properly.
What?
SS Developer says, after the AR64 port is more complete, will it be much easier to port to new platforms like RISC-V? I guess so. I mean, any port that happens in some way like makes it easier for future ports, I think, because it just forces us to do better abstractions. The initial state of the x86 only kernel was very x86 specific, and it still is in many ways, right? But it has incrementally been moving away from that thanks to the work of people doing, well, even just the initial 64-bit port forced some changes that that improved abstraction. But like now that AR64 is coming, it's making it better. And yeah, I think so. I don't know anything specific about RISC-V. Have you looked at that?
I know that it's more similar to ARM64 than it is to x86-64 because it's made from whole cloth by I think it's made by UC Berkeley. But no, I mean the answer to the question is a resounding yes for the reasons you mentioned, but I don't know anything about RISC-V specifically.
Fair enough. So you mentioned that you wanted to work on the AR64 port. Do you have hardware or something like that?
I've got a couple Raspberry Pis sitting around. Yeah, I've
Okay.
got one that's supposed to be my Pi hole doing the DNS ad filtering stuff. I don't know. I just kind of let that sit over on the coffee table or end table so much that it got out of date and it was slowing down my internet so much. So Need to update that thing, get it back in place, because there's way too many ads on my television when I go to use it. But yeah, I think I've got a Pi 3 sitting in a box somewhere with a bunch of wires hooked up to it. So there's some hardware lying around I'd like to poke with.
Yeah, I think we have a bunch of people who bought Raspberry Pis, and they're just kind of waiting for an opening or better weather. I don't know what people are waiting for. It's like
they're waiting for one person to get something more exciting than a splash screen demo. Once
I guess
that
so.
happens, the floodgates are going to open. Or they're waiting for a graph, right? We need a graph of number of syscalls you can make before the thing falls over. I don't know.
Yeah,
Get that
I mean,
graph-driven development going.
there's a to-do macro, I think, like to-do AR64.
Mhm.
You could trivially graph the number of to-do AR64s, for example.
Sure.
But yeah, I haven't hit them in any of my Fix Me videos yet. I'm kind of dreading getting one of those and like having to build a tool chain and everything. But we'll see.
Looks like we skipped some interesting looking questions. Let's see.
Oh yeah, just bring them up if you see something.
Where was the one that I wanted? So there's a question about FlyString. I think it's come up before.
Right. With all the talk of a new string class, I've often seen FlyString pop up in videos. What is a FlyString? Do you want to answer that, Andrew? I always answer these kind of things.
Oh, let's see if I can give a reasonable answer. So I think the point of FlyString is that we're going to be generating a lot of strings that are all the same when we're doing things like executing JavaScript. And instead of creating 100 strings with the string var in it and allocating and heap churning and ref counting and stuff, we just intern that string into program memory. We say, okay, we're going to create a string, we're going to store it here. Here is the string var. And anytime anyone wants the string var, we're going to hash what they have and give them that one. And it's, for the most part, never destroyed, I think. Or maybe it's reference counted. But
it's reference counted, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in effect, the ones for all the JavaScript keywords are never destroyed. But yeah, the point is that instead of creating new strings on the heap all the time, we just always point to the string with that content.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it gives you an interesting thing that when you have two fly strings, it's incredibly fast to compare them, because you know that if they are the same string, then they share the same underlying data pointer. So it's just one pointer compare, no matter how long the strings are, which is very, very nice in something like a web engine where you do a ton of string comparing. In fact, most of what a browser does, I feel sometimes, is comparing strings against each other.
All right. Another one we missed is this one. Chris asks, isn't there a risk to overstretch yourself with Yakt and Serenity and Ladybird?
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't feel like that.
I feel like it really gives more options to developers, right? I think that's one of the most powerful things about working on Serenity is that you can work on something, get tired of it, turn 45 degrees, and there's a whole new world of things that you haven't looked at for months that have all sorts of interesting problems you want to tackle. And having this many projects is just more of the same. You know, someone could have asked the question a year and a half ago, isn't there risk to overstretch yourself with the browser and Pixel Paint and Hack Studio, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just more of the same philosophy, just with more visibility, because it's not all in the Serenity project. People seem to people seem to notice in the Hacker Newses of the world the discrete projects we have that market themselves towards not just Serenity, because they see our libraries and applications that only run on Serenity is like, oh well, that's them that's just messing around. Once we say, oh well, we can build Linux and Windows and Mac OS and whatever else, then people notice and they think, wow, that's a lot of work. It's always been a lot of work. It's just more visible.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Yeah, exactly. And it's been good and bad to get that kind of attention. More good than bad though. And it seems to me like a natural progression of what we're doing is just eventually our things get so good that they want to crawl out of Serenity and be on other platforms as well, because why not? They could become useful tools on other platforms someday as well. And I'm happy that, because when I originally thought about introducing the idea of like, let's make the build browser cross-platform as a project and that we take seriously, I was a bit worried almost that people would say like, okay, well, now you're going too far. I'm still going to do it, but in the back of my mind, I was like, are people going to come along for this? And it seems like everybody does, really, other than the occasional YouTube comment like, why are you doing so many things? But I think everybody has been primed into this mindset of like, let's just do everything.
Sure.
All at the same time. Seems to have worked on you. And
I'd say so.
And I'm glad that we're so many who get into the spirit, I guess. I definitely don't feel like we're overstretching. Let's see. Skyrising said that looks like there are 125 to-do AR64s, so it's 2.6% of all fixmes and to-dos. Okay, so it's a small chance to hit those, but you still could. And I have no idea what the state of those are, by the way. They might be trivial things. They might be 4-week projects. Who knows? That's the beauty of fixmes and to-dos. Let's see. Ares says, Andreas, how do you view your role as a leader for the Serenity project? Has your view changed over time? Have you ever been afraid that the community is going to want to go in a different direction? It has absolutely changed over time. I mean, I've evolved as a person with the project. I think it would be impossible not to. I was talking to somebody the other day about this. Like, you can't scale a project from 1 person to 800 people and not at least develop a little bit personally as well. So my views have definitely changed, and I've tried to stick to the core principles that I started the project based on, and I'd like to imagine that it has worked. But you know, it was more of a Wild West environment earlier on because we didn't have that many people. So, and there was a lot of sort of uncharted territory. Like you could go in any direction with the project, and it's less of that now. You know, like the system has stabilized to an extent. Like we're not building new applications every week anymore. Which it was a thing in the beginning. Like it felt like that sometimes, and I think it gave people this idea that we're a very high velocity project, and that sort of perception of us has stayed, which is fine with me. I think we are a high velocity project, but not insane velocity project that adds new applications every week like we once did. But have I been afraid that the community would want to go in a different direction? Not really, other than the thing I just mentioned about like when I wanted to introduce a cross-platform browser. That was maybe the only time when I started thinking about stuff like that. That and Yakt, like both of those things. I kind of wondered, like, okay, so how are people going to feel about this? Like, will the same people who have been here for this, for the C++ Serenity, will they want to come along for exploring a new language? And for the most part, it seems like people are up for the challenge, for the adventure. But I don't know, like, what's your perspective on that, Andrew? Like, you've been here since 2019 at least, right? And
yes,
you've seen the project grow and change.
I don't know. I think in regards to Yakt, I was definitely, I don't know. I was surprised by the announcement that you had, even though like I'd helped you with the investigations into Rust. I know there were maybe 5 or 6 of us that poked at that at the time, but I mean, when you disappeared for 2 weeks with JT, I thought, oh, I guess that experiment's over. And you came back and you're like, okay, guys, here's a compiler. I wrote it in Rust, and it's like, you did what? And it took a little bit to come around. I think I don't know. I mean, I've spent the last 4 years or so just trying to get better at C++ for personal and work reasons, and it's the concepts that we're bringing forward with Yakt are so not C++. I mean, it's like the evolution, but I hadn't been keeping up on what languages like Rust and Zig were doing. So trying to wrap my head around those was hard. I think there was a period of time over the summer where it seemed like everyone was working on Yakt, and then it kind of calmed down and everyone started working on the browser again. So I think the community kind of, I don't know, it kind of points at the nearest squirrel and kind of goes for it. So I think, whatever is happening in the project, if someone is working on something, other people will look at it, say that's interesting, and work on it too. It does feel like there's always been this influence that your YouTube channel has, where if you work on an application, suddenly there's 15 patches for that application. Go figure. So it's really all about what is getting attention.
Yeah.
What's being highlighted, and that's what people will work on. That's really kind of how the community seems to function. I mean, people obviously have their pet projects, but
Yeah, I think it's like one thing that drives people is like the highlighting that happens. Like, yeah, my YouTube channel does a lot of that, but also, as you say, like if somebody starts working in a corner, it just attracts other people to go in that same corner somehow. Like that's how the whole Clang tool chain came about, for example. Like somebody just started poking at that, right? And a little community formed around it. But yeah, it is interesting what you say about Yakt, that like it is different from C++, and that was one of those things where I felt maybe a little bit concerned about that people will feel that they've invested in C++ and they feel like, oh, I can work on Serenity and it will benefit me in my professional life because I'm practicing my C++ skills, getting better at that, and then here is sort of a bit of a step away from that, I guess, and less immediate professional benefits.
well,
But yeah, I don't know. It seems to me like it's less important that you're using like a specific language,
yeah.
and more important that you learn like how to architect things, how to build big software, how to attach things to each other and get it to work and work well.
That's something we've tried to do a lot. Like I've seen you reject patches that try to add some cool new thing because someone adds it in complete isolation and it's not clear at all how it relates to the rest of the system. And I think like maybe we shouldn't have added the SQL engine when we added it because there wasn't any connection to
Mm-hmm.
anything. Now that now
Tim.
that it's been Tim. I was like, who was doing this? Now that Tim added it to the browser to manage cookies, there's more of a reason to go look at it, right? Because it's related to the browser. If you're looking at the browser, you're going to look at the SQL engine, and if you're looking at the SQL engine, you look at the browser, and there's more integration. And I think that's something that when you're just spraying applications everywhere, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that we're trying to. Well, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that one of the strengths of the system is, well, we've got all these pieces that work together. Like if the browser doesn't use every library in the system, like what's that library doing? Why do we need it? it doesn't help. It doesn't glue
Yeah.
everything together. I mean, it doesn't have to be the browser, but if we're not using it in multiple places, is it a good fit? Something that I feel like has had a stronger stance recently than it did back in 2020.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's also like us learning how to grow the project and how to prune things. I think something that we've been talking about a little bit recently, and it's becoming more and more interesting to me, is like, should we cut off dead wood? Like, are there some parts of the system where like, okay, well, this was an interesting investigation, but like it is an isolated thing, and maybe we don't need it, or maybe we should rethink its role, things like that. Because until now, we have been pretty happy in just expanding, right?
Yep. And
There,
there's a bunch of demos that are kind of heritage that maybe we don't need. There's
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah, like those would be the first to cut because you basically don't need them. It was just a fun thing to do in 2019, and then it kind of
Yeah, like the fire demo is cool. Eyes is cool. You can put a grid of 600 eyes on your screen. I don't know.
you can.
If it seriously integrates with the system. I don't know. I don't want to axe eyes specifically, but there's applications like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something we do have to figure out how to deal with, because if we just allow ourselves to grow indefinitely in all directions, then that's not healthy for
No.
us, right? So it's a conversation that we haven't really had, and yeah, I guess I'm not really looking forward to having it, but
No. People put time into those applications. And
yeah,
libraries.
exactly. And I guess the way to start with something like that is me cutting something I made. So just to set the tone. Because I made crap. I made some crap. It's in there. So
yeah. Speaking of cutting things, there's a question from Addy from like 15 minutes ago. You know, in order to fill gaps of drivers in the future, would we ever port drivers from FreeBSD? Haiku does this for wireless and wired chipsets, and I think that's a fair question, but it's also relates to what we were just talking about, which is something that we cut. Right? We used to have kernel modules you could just load in, and at some point we changed the kernel enough that they didn't work, and it was clear that nobody was using them. No one knew how to use them, so we threw them out. I think for the specific question of porting from FreeBSD, not directly. I know people have gone hunting for design documentation for drivers, and when they don't find any, they go look at things like the FreeBSD driver, the Linux driver, to see like, well, what the heck magic values are these guys sending to this device to get it to behave? And I think that's probably where we'll stay for very long to come. I don't think there's any drive within anyone in the project to create an API for drivers that would be compatible with FreeBSD. It's certainly possible that we might want a driver API that's reasonable in the future, but I don't think it'll end up looking exactly like Linux drivers or FreeBSD drivers.
yeah. But I mean, with everything in Serenity, things happen when somebody picks it up and decides to make it happen, right? So could be that somebody does, could be that nobody does. I can only speak for myself personally, just like you, right? And I know I'm not going to do this, but somebody might.
Yeah.
Oh, Sam says you already did cut the IRC app. I assume you made that. Yes, that's true. Good point. I did make that, and it was a bit crap, and it is no longer with us. So fair point. I guess that means I can cut everything everybody else made now too. Not serious about that, by the way. Just to be clear. Dammy Killer 37 says, so what you're saying is that it's time for a plan. I did not say that.
I didn't hear you say that.
No.
I think,
Oh, sorry. Let's take this one first. Christopher asks, in relation to cutting things, what part of the Serenity and related system is the most dear to your heart? And how difficult would it be to cut? Oh, Andrew, do you have a part like that?
I don't know. I think there's some cute utilities and stuff that we have. Like, do we have them? I'm not sure. I feel like there's some things in our utilities directory that have been there since the beginning that we might not need anymore. Like, I remember when I was researching that blog post, I found that there was an MOTD when you logged in, and you could cat etsy MOTD. I don't know if that's still there, but
I think it might be. I think it gets a commit every year, somebody updating the date.
yeah, I mean, it would certainly hurt to cut something that's been there since the beginning. I know you used to have some Easter eggs in the kernel for like special dates that were meaningful to you, and I think those have been gone.
They might be, yeah. Yeah. They were just my nephew's birthdays. I don't remember if they're still there, but yeah, there's been some stuff like that. But I also made a push for that, like at some point, saying that we should probably stop having jokes and memes.
Yeah.
In the code base, or at least user facing, because at least in my view, it is really hard to scale jokes to hundreds of people, right? Like everybody puts in one joke, and now you have a system with 800 jokes. It gets a bit tacky at some point. So that was something at one point, and I think that ended up pretty good. Let's see. Anon was saying, did ChatGPT question already get answered? I don't know.
That is this one.
Oh.
Which is, what are your thoughts on ChatGPT? Do you think it'll ever break in the programming space? And I think for an initial cut at this, I think it's a neat tool that generates some interesting text that when you go and look at if you look at the programming examples people post, they tend to look correct and sound very authoritative. But if you actually know the subject matter and you know the realm that code snippet is talking about, they're often subtly wrong. So I think as of right now, it's a neat gimmick, but I don't think it's ready for replacing programmers. That's just a ridiculous claim if people are making it.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's making that claim other than as a way to troll people into.
It's a fun straw man. Makes a good Twitter post.
True. Although I feel like we went from, wow, this is neat, to, can people please stop posting ChatGPT screenshots pretty quickly.
I was done with them after a week. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for a few days. I posted my share, but I'm good now. It's like waiting for the next thing. But yeah, as you say, it's cool tech for sure. Let's see. Oh wait. Linus was saying that fortunes.json is a nice dumping ground for jokes and memes. Please don't axe it. All right, Linus. We won't axe it.
There's some memes in there that, like, even with context, they're just completely opaque to anyone who's not been around for 3 years. But
yeah, I'm sure that our German friends can make some kind of explanation website about it.
See, Ali has a challenge for you.
Do you
want a new application every week? I don't want a new application every week. That sounds like a lot of code to review.
Yeah, I don't want that either. That would be way too much. I feel like we have the right set of applications right now, honestly. Like, there isn't like a big missing application.
Right, like after Linus added the presenter, what's missing in the Office suite? Right, we've got
That's a rich text editor, I guess.
Yeah, we've got text editor. It's not rich text. We can view PDFs. We can't create them. We can almost view videos, thanks to the work that Zaggy's been doing.
But we can't create them.
We can't create them. It seems
Mhm.
like a theme. We can view all sorts of interesting, popular data formats, but creating them is more
Right.
difficult.
Yeah, we can receive emails, but we can't send them.
Oh, really? We can't send them.
I don't think we have a composer for the email.
I don't think anyone has worked on mail since Luke touched it 9 months ago. When the heck did the last person touch the mail app? Let's find out.
Getting the live details.
Someone messed with graphics endpoint last week. Touched this file. No, but the last let applications blah 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 blah. Yeah, none of these have anything to do with the mail application. Resize splitters. June 6th. Fix mail settings for Mac 2. So yeah, it's been a hot minute since people looked at that one.
Yeah. I think one thing that would open up a lot of opportunities like that is editable HTML content. So, and that's sort of something we have to build for the browser anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Once you build content editable support in the web, then you can easily make an email composer. You can make a simple like rich text editing app, stuff like that.
You can make a Mastodon viewer and poster.
I'm sure you could.
I don't know if that's what Network Exception and Cloudness are working on, but I saw some demos.
Yeah, there were some demos like some weeks ago. I don't know what happened with that. Let's see. Joseph asks, any cool ideas for Ladybird dev tools that you haven't seen implemented in other browsers? Dev tools. I guess there's all kinds of dev tools you could make, but from my perspective, but what we really need is like dev tools, I guess, or browser engine developer tools. We're pretty far out from making a browser that somebody would use to debug their website, and we should probably focus a bit on tools that we can use to debug our browser. That said, like a lot of those tools are the same, so it's not like there isn't overlap. But I would like to see more tools that expose internals of the browser in a graphical way so that people can orient themselves a bit, because browsers are complex things and there's a lot of stuff going on. And if you are not intimately familiar with the architecture, having some kind of a graphical view into that probably be really helpful just for orienting yourself.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest downside of the current. Like some of the best ways to debug web pages you don't understand is to dump the DOM, dump the layout tree, and actually parsing that is a skill.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could ever speak to what JavaScript developers need, because that's not me. But for trying to figure out, I just wanted to go browse the news and the thing crashed, it'd be nice to be able to have those graphical things for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, some kind of JavaScript debugger would be cool, so that you can do basic stuff like set a breakpoint, stop execution there, and then like have a little REPL where you can just ask questions about the current variable environment, stuff like that. Because at the moment, like a lot of debugging websites is effectively debugging JavaScript, right? And somebody else's JavaScript, and it can be a bit of a hassle.
I think Luke is a master at that, but
yeah, I don't know how he does that.
I don't know if anyone else is as good as Luke is at debugging websites on the web. Like he looks at the minified JS and he actually understands what the hell it's talking about, instead of just seeing like alphabet soup.
Yeah, he's got that skill. And we could build better tools, so you don't need to be a genius savant like Luke to debug.
Well, Sam has an idea. He's saying he thought of adding a tree visualization for CSS specifically.
Sure.
Which I don't know what that would look like. Which probably means that it would be a good thing to visualize.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm just thinking, yeah, you have the sheets at the top level, and then you have all of the rules with the declarations inside of them, and you don't know that. I'm sure you would love to see that in a tree view.
It has to look exactly like that old Unix display of the file system that they had in like Jurassic Park.
Obviously,
With all the
yes.
buildings everywhere. You got one building for the default style sheet and one for the user agent style sheet.
That does sound good. Let's see. We got Sophie Bros saying, what would be your thoughts on using libweb for things like PDF rendering? Could it be worth for consistency across the system? I think PDF probably wants to be its own thing.
Yeah, that's another thing I don't know anything about. I thought it was really hilarious when you made that video on PDF. You fixed one fix me in PDF. The pull request was like 3 lines, and the video was an hour and a half long. Because
Yes,
it's so foreign compared to the rest of the system, and that's not because the developers didn't know what they were doing. They weren't writing real Serenity code, blah blah blah. It's just because it's implementing a spec that doesn't look like much anything else.
Yeah, exactly. It's like its own little island. And the reason that you want to implement it is because it's such a ubiquitous format, but it doesn't really like cooperate with anything else that you have, other than maybe image formats and font rendering for TrueType.
Yeah, it doesn't relate tightly to the fonts.
Yeah.
We are missing plugging in PDF viewing into the browser. I think I ran across those APIs when I refactored libweb to use global objects properly, or whatever the right description for that change was. And there's like this weird multimedia plugin API that you look at the spec and it's like, yeah, we've got this list, and the only thing you put in there is PDF because Java applets are dead. And there's a place for it in the browser, but I think the relationship is that the browser should, or libweb should use our PDF renderer rather than the other way around.
Yeah, of course. And it's like this thing you were saying earlier, that if the browser isn't using a library, then should it really be in the system?
Exactly.
And obviously it should be using libpdf so that we can keep it. But I think that makes sense. And the API you're thinking of is probably navigator.plugins or something like that.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Yeah, we should totally hook that up. Same thing with WebGL. Although I guess that was already hooked up to an
WebGL's
extent.
kind of hooked up.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. And I think web audio's not hooked up. Web video's not hooked up. We got all sorts of hooks.
So many fix-me's. Did you ever try the random fix-me thing, Andrew?
I did not. I don't think. I think Ali had a website where you click a button and it generates a fix me. And I pulled it up on my phone during lunch one day, and I tapped the button and it didn't work, and I complained on Discord. I think that's as far as I got.
That's a riveting story.
Yes. I tried it. It didn't work. There's some fix me's on the fix me roulette.
Yeah, true. Chris Cross says, what would you say are important areas to improve on if you would want to see mass adoption of Serenity? I will quickly answer and say I don't want to see mass adoption of Serenity. I think that would be awful. So I don't want to change anything to that end, but I'm just a man with my own goals and dreams. What about you, Andrew?
I think there's a lot of polish in a lot of the system, but there are places where you open up an application and it's just kind of been abandoned or neglected as people have updated other applications. Like, we do have that benefit of using the same GUI library everywhere, that when you improve combo boxes in one application, it improves them everywhere. Like, someone just recently added a way to filter what's shown in a file browser. I thought that was a really cool change, and I think that'll we should start using that in more places if people are looking for fix-me's. But we definitely have parts of the system that would need a refresh, I think. And not to call it anything specifically, but just in general, there's applications that I don't pull up on a regular basis, you don't pull up on a regular basis, that maybe should be axed or maybe should be cleaned up.
Yeah, like stuff that just fell behind a little bit, I guess. True.
I have a kernel question. Does Serenity have an AML parser? I think that's a kernel question. Maybe I should look before I answer.
I think isn't that the ACP?
ACP.
Thing?
No, I don't want the disease. I want the kernel stuff. I think, yes. I believe someone will tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I think that someone started a little utility application. I'm not sure if anyone has. I don't think it's merged yet, but it's something that we've needed for a while to do fancy kernel things. It's not in place. It's one of the it's another one of those things that everyone talks about. Oh, we should have a library that does X. We should have feature X, and until someone sits down and does it, it's not going to happen. Yeah, the ACP machine language. Yeah, that is what I'm thinking of then.
Yeah. Andre was asking, Andreas, do you ever shuffle the fix-me's, not like the answer, and re-record the intro again? So that's kind of the reason that I try to talk a lot before doing the shuffle. Is to prevent myself from reshuffling.
You mean to prevent us from seeing that you're reshuffling? Convince us you're not doing it?
It's more like I want to commit to it so that even if I get something that sounds like a lot of work, I've talked for a minute. I don't want to do that again, so I'll just commit to it. But it has happened a couple of times that I recorded like 30-40 minutes and then hit some super annoying wall, got frustrated, and went for some air and started over. I think I've thrown out like 5 or 6 videos like that. Yeah, that's some of the things that I hit were like just not. I didn't feel like I was being pleasant to listen to, so I didn't want to put that energy out there. And I don't know. It's always weird when you're making stuff for YouTube, because at the end of the day, I want to put out positive content that I have a good vibe, and I'm enthusiastic about what I'm doing. And on one hand, it's like, oh, well, this is reality. Sometimes you're not having fun, and sometimes things are annoying and you get frustrated. But when it comes to like, I have a video like that of myself getting frustrated, and then I sit there and I think, should I upload this? And I always decide not to, because like, who wants to watch me get progressively more salty for an hour? I don't know. I wouldn't want that. So that's the answer to that. Andre with the super chat saying thanks. Thank you for the super chat. Very cool.
I feel like that's something that I would be afraid of a lot, trying to record some kind of YouTube video, is getting annoyed. Because I do find myself getting annoyed at the code a lot. Mostly after I've spent 3 hours getting lost in the code and I've lost sight of the fact that I should probably eat dinner. Maybe that's just a food thing, but it is hard to pull yourself out of a difficult problem and stop getting frustrated and, actually step back and take a nap and come back tomorrow. At least personally.
Yeah. No, it is tricky. It's something that gets a lot easier with practice, but like in the past, I always had ample time to choose my tasks, which made it a bit different. So sometimes if you just end up in a situation where you feel like this isn't what I wanted to do, and then that kind of gets amplified by the frustration of not making progress, it can be rough. So I'm just saying this to motivate you to work on your YouTube channel, Andrew, because since you can pick whatever you want to do in your code tours and stuff.
I think there's one video on my YouTube channel, and it's like a crappy phone recording of a Falcon 9 launching out of Orlando. Like, that's it. From like 2018.
All right. All right. Well, more to come. You heard it here first.
That's not what I said.
All right. All right. Sorry. On that note, I do kind of have to get going, Andrew. So
Sure.
let's shut this down before it goes too far. Before I try to peer pressure you any further into YouTubing. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on Office Hours.
Sure.
I really appreciate it. Yeah. And you were such a good sport because I was only half serious last week when I said that you have to come on. So
no, it's fun.
It was. And thank you to everybody who came to the chat.
Yep. And we got to peer pressure the next person. I see Sam's name in there. So are you next, Sam? Maybe not.
Notice how everybody who was in the last stream is like very cautious about asking when. All right. Thank you everybody for coming, and Sam says no. And see you all next week, I guess. Ciao.